Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in to our young little YouTube channel. We sure appreciate the support. Any likes and subscribes you want to do would be much appreciated. But if you follow us on Instagram, same channel name, Overland_Adventure Times, you've probably seen some posts in regards to the platform and drawer system that I've been putting together. And since we got some new parts in, it seemed like it was a good time to go through, give you an update, and kind of bring you into the process of what's left to put this thing together. So for some background, the initial version of what I had built back here was simply a 3/4 MDF topper supported by 2x6s, 3 of them, 2 on each side and 1 down the middle for support, and then with a folding hinged section up front to give us use of our second row seat still, because we still have 2 kids at home. And when I put it together, it was kind of meant to be just a proof of concept, and we ended up using it for about 2 years as it was. And what spurred the desire for something different was just the fact that we didn't have a lot of height under here for storage. A 2x6 is only 5.5 inches high, and so it doesn't give you a lot of room. We could fit a couple of soft cases for clothes underneath there because they were flexible, and we put that in the back, accessible from the rear. And then from the front, we had like our tire chains, first aid kit, and the kids' tents, miscellaneous stuff stuffed underneath in the front. So, and that worked out well, but we could do a lot better. We could cut down on the amount of cases and extra stuff that we have to take along on our trips by having some more useful storage underneath here. So in doing research on the market, basically nobody makes anything for this is a Yukon XL or a Suburban, that platform, in any shape or form. No matter how much you were willing to pay the price for it, it just doesn't exist. Now, what I modeled this after is Goose Gear. I would say they make some of the best products on the market for this type of thing. But the closest thing, oh, there's a bee. Now the closest thing that Goose Gear makes that would fit in this space is for a Winnebago. And even with that, it's an inch too narrow, and it's almost as long. I believe it's 51 inches or 51 and a half. And the front section of this is 54. But then I have a folding section that folds down over our second row seats that I'll show you here in a moment. And that's what gives us enough length to actually sleep on. And so that still doesn't offer any solution for that forward section. And the total cost for it, I believe, I'll throw a picture of it up on the screen here, is about $4,500 just for that front 48 by 51-ish section. It has 2 drawers up front, unequal lengths, and then a small one on the forward section that opens to the front. So no matter how much money you want to spend, it's not an ideal solution for our rig. So that left me figuring out a way to build my own version that would work. And so I poured over the pictures, looking at how they construct their framing, and obviously they use 80/20 aluminum. And once I was able to find the little corner blocks that they use, that's what really cemented the idea of, hey, I can do this. We can make a version that fits our rig for a fraction of the cost for something that's still imperfect and would require modification anyway. So currently, I'm still using the original MDF topper here that I had on the first iteration with the 2x6s. And I chose MDF because its actual dimension is 49 inches wide versus 48 for plywood, and that fits absolutely perfectly between the plastic sides in the cargo area of a Suburban or Yukon XL. And so the base frame I constructed out of 80/20. In the back section, the 49 by 54 is made in 2 modules in the back here. Total 8-inch height opening for a drawer, and a usable drawer length of 52 inches of that 54. And then for the front section, which I'll show you some close-ups of here, it's another about 23 inches deep by that 49, and it folds up. And that third module is what fits our clothing. And again, I'll show you some close-ups of that. Now in the rear, eventually I will have two drawers. One side, this what I have right now is what we're putting together, is going to be for our kitchen, stove, etc. And then the other side will be general storage, probably like our first aid kit, tarps, our tire chains, some recovery gear, and tripods and that kind of thing. So it'll be our miscellaneous storage. But for right now, it's just an open hole. It works just fine. It's a little less convenient, but it gets us going here. Now when I mentioned kind of building it in sections, part of that was due to cost. This will come in at a fraction of a Goose Gear setup of any size or shape, but it's still not cheap. The 8020 isn't particularly cheap, and drawer slides of this length, 52 inches, I got a good deal on these. They're Fulterer 450 pound capacity slides, but they were still just a little over $200. The drawer box was a couple $100s too. I had it built, which I'll show you some details of again, because my carpentry skills are not up to par for what we would want for this, for it to be able to hold up over the long term. Because my final goal for this will be just as functional as something professionally made, maybe a little less polish on the details, but the function is the main thing that we're looking for. So what we've got to do today is, I've already got previously one side of the sliders mounted. The brackets are bolted to the frame and everything, so one side's pretty well good to go. What I was waiting on was brackets for the other side, so we've got those now. And then these have to be cut in half and some extra holes drilled to fit the frame properly and fit the sliders properly. So we'll be doing that, be actually mounting the brackets to the frame, slider to the brackets, drawer to the sliders. So hopefully we'll get it all done here in one shot. It may end up being over a couple of days. The weather hasn't been real cooperative today. It's actually a pretty nice day aside from some wind. So with all that said, let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to start with getting the brackets cut and modified, because that'll be the base of everything else that we have to do. Alright, so the end result here, we've got the base cut in half to fit on the 1 inch wide 8020. 3 new holes drilled for the base. And then on the piece behind there, we've got 1 hole enlarged because they just don't quite line up with the sliders right without that. So that's our first step done. Alright, so with the brackets done, I've been kind of debating on what the next best plan of attack is going to be. And I think it's going to be getting the brackets bolted to the sliders themselves, and then going from there and see how best it will be to attach the slides to the actual drawer. So that's what we're going to do next. So I'll show you some details here. So for how the frame is, I'm going to have to make the base of the drawer be basically flush with the bottom of that second portion of the slide. So I've got it laid out, so it'll end up being like this, and the bottom of that third piece will be hanging underneath there. The total opening's 8 inches, and the height of the drawer is 7.5. which will give me enough room to use I'm going to have some kind of a 1/4-inch lid topper surface on it, which will be coming in a future episode, we could say. But that should give me enough room for a little bit of margin of error, and still have everything fit the way I want it to. Alright, so moment of truth. I'm going to start screwing in. Hardware is their number 8 by 5/8 screws. The thickness of the drawer itself is 5/8, so with the thickness of the slider, it gives me a little bit of a buffer there. And I've got room for about, if I remember right, about 10 screws per side. So should be sufficient. I'm going to get started. So to keep us going here, slid back, unbolted and slid back the MDF topper so I can get to the brackets that I had already mounted on this slider. Gonna take this off the frame so I can mount it to the other side of the drawer, and then we'll put it all in together and get it bolted back down to the frame here inside the vehicle. Alright, so we've made some progress. As you can see, I had to do some disassembly. The center bar and then the front one as well had to come off, and I kind of got busy just working and not filming, but had to put it in at an angle, tip it in like that to get it to fit in. Right now the brackets are just resting. I haven't bolted them down yet. But it went in fairly easy for kind of how big and unwieldy it is. Alright guys, so after a ton of tedious little back and forth adjustments and getting everything aligned right and situated with the brackets to the frame, she's in place and everything is working reasonably well. She is a little tight right at the front, so I'll probably mess around and try and figure that out a little bit more, but for right now we're going to call it good. So I can get the middle bar and the top bar situated appropriately, and also there's these little center supports right here that aren't actually secured into place yet, so I'm going to get those fixed up. So that's what we are doing next. Alright guys, so that is the bulk of the action for today. Got the major parts of the project accomplished. Before I put the top back on and secure it, the MDF, I am going to pull this back and do some vacuuming and do a good clean out underneath here, because this will be basically the final configuration for a bit. I still have a drawer face to put on and make a little cutout for the locking mechanism here, plus a compression latch for being able to pull it out easier. So there is a bit more to do on the front, but for today it's going to be some cleanup, put it back together, and we'll be good to go. You know, real quick, maybe some pros and cons of a project like this versus buying it pre-done and just putting together a kit. The biggest pro is obviously cost. You're saving a ton of money by doing it yourself, and you're getting something that is custom fit for your space. And it's also a fantastic learning experience. You get to learn new things, work with some new materials, and have some fun, and have something at the end that you can really be proud of that you put together yourself. Now cons, you have to do it yourself. Measure everything, source all the materials, get all the hardware. I did manage to avoid any major mistakes on this one. I had to order different lengths of bolts a couple of times, but my main measurements, the main materials, all came out good to go on the first round. So I'm very happy about that. And then from there, it's little things. Like I said, the fit and finish of anything from Goose Gear is going to be fantastic. You put it together, you've got instructions, there's no figuring things out, taking things apart multiple times and putting it back together to get things to fit correctly. And in this case, there is. And sometimes you end up with things like a little damage to my custom sticker here, my gander sticker. I nicked it top and bottom there. And I've got some other little scratches in a couple of different places. And that's just from continuously taking things apart, putting it back together as I source materials and put different things together. But that's really it for the downsides on this one as far as I'm concerned. So overall, a project like this I think is definitely worth it, and we're really going to enjoy having this thing functional and cutting down on the extra cases that we have to carry and stack in the vehicle. Kind of next steps will be, like I said, the drawer face, latch, and then getting a top on it. The front section is going to have a removable piece that will hold our stove at the end, and then the back portion of that will have a lid, probably on coffee table hinges, so we have it both covered and some usable flat space. And for that, at this point, I'm planning on using 1/4 inch HDPE plastic, like what I have on the closet module for the sliding doors, except that's just a 1/4 inch. So that's the plans going forward. Thanks for hanging with me here, making it through this whole thing. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, give it a thumbs up. We'd love it if you subscribe, and we'll see you again on the next adventure.